Hey everybody, my name is Miles Cochran. I'm a public information officer for Caltrans District 1, representing Humboldt and Del Norte counties. Today we're specifically talking about Humboldt County and US 101 in Eureka, where we're planning on improving the roadway there for some non-motorized users. So this is the South Broadway Complete Streets project. Couple of things about today's presentation. So first, there's going to be a presentation, and then afterward, there's going to be an opportunity to ask questions. So the first part, you'll be in listen-only mode. Whenever the Q&A session does begin, you'll have an opportunity to use the raise hand function on WebEx. It's at the bottom of the screen there. And that'll be very helpful for us as we select, folks to ask questions. If you do want to submit comments for this project, an email address is on the screen right now, so we will leave this up so that you can jot that email address down or that address, physical address down. This project is on our web page. There's a project web page for this. If you want to whip out your phone and use the QR code on your screen right now, that'll pull up the project web page. It's also really easy to find on Google. You could just Google South Broadway Complete Streets, or you could go to the URL, tinyurl.com/South Broadway Eureka. And yes, this presentation is going to be shared on our project webpage after this. And if you are participating in this virtual meeting, we want to let you know that it is being recorded. This is our Title VI statement. Caltrans ensures that no person in the state of California is excluded from, participation in, denied the benefits of, or otherwise subjected to discrimination in Caltrans programs, policies, procedures, activities, and services on the grounds of race, color, national origin, sex, age, or disability. And there's also a QR code that you can use for a Title VI survey. It's not mandatory, but you can participate in that, and that is helpful as we always strive to improve our Title VI efforts. And we'll leave that on the screen just for a second. And yes, like I said, my name is Miles Cochran. I'm the Public Information Officer for this project. And without further ado, let's hand things over to the project manager, Jeff Pimentel.
All right, thanks, Miles. So as Miles mentioned, my name is Jeff Pimentel. I'm the project manager for Caltrans here in District 1. Thanks everyone for joining and looking forward to sharing details about this exciting project. So with that, this evening, just in terms of our agenda for the public meeting, we'll go a little into background and kind of where this project came from. We'll talk about the project purpose and need, the project description. We'll review the proposed improvements for this project in detail, location by location. We'll touch a little bit on the right-of-way acquisition needs for the project, as well as the environmental document and anticipated permits required for the project. We'll close off with the project cost as well as schedule, and then we'll open it up for question and answers to everyone there. As Miles mentioned, it's convenient for us if you could use the chat feature. If there is a particular slide you would like to reference in your question, we have the slide numbers at the bottom right corner of each of them. So when you submit your question, if the number of the slide is pertinent, if you could add that, and that could help us potentially bring that slide back up when we're responding to your question. So in terms of a little bit of a background, back in early 2021, through a partnering effort with Humboldt County Association of Governments, City of Eureka, Caltrans, a Eureka Broadway multimodal corridor plan was developed, and a number of concepts and ideas came out of that in terms of ways to enhance and increase multimodal connectivity, safety, reduce congestion, and create a sense of place in the City of Eureka. And so the improvements that you're going to see here shortly as part of the South Broadway Complete Streets project are kind of a byproduct and fell out of a lot of the ideas and concepts from that study. With that, the project purpose. Project purpose is to increase pedestrian and bicyclist safety, connectivity, and the level of comfort, and to improve accessibility and on-time performance of the transit facility. Project need. Broadway serves as a main street through the city of Eureka, and it is one of our busiest corridors in District 1. Traffic volumes, the high number of lanes, and speed discourage bicycle and pedestrian use. There are a lack of bicycle facilities on Broadway. The distances between marked crossings is rather significant, and we have transit delays due to merging challenges for buses trying to re-enter traffic when they make stops to either pick up or drop off passengers. Surrounding residential communities are discouraged from using active transportation to access destinations on Broadway as well. In terms of our proposed improvements, just a list here, and then as I mentioned earlier, we'll go in detail location by location. But the proposed improvements that we're looking at for the project would include Class 4 bikeways. A Class 4 bikeway is defined as a bike lane with a physical separation, vertical separation between the traffic lane and the bike lane. So this would include a 3-foot wide buffer, striped out buffer area with a flexible bollard or channelizer that would provide that vertical separation, similar to the photo you see on the left side of the page. We'll also include enhanced bike and pedestrian intersection markings to bring more awareness to those users for both the bikes and peds on where they should be, as well as to bring attention to motorized traffic and vehicles on where to expect bikes and peds to be traveling and to look out for them. We'll be reducing lane widths from 12 feet as they currently are today, and proposing to reduce those to 11 feet. We are proposing a traffic signal at Hillthicker Lane, which would provide additional crossing opportunities for peds and bikes as well. We're looking at adding crossing markings at driveways, again, to bring awareness both to the motorized and non-motorized user of the location of bikes across driveways. There'll be 2 new bus stops added with the project, and then 2 bus stops that will be relocated. So a total of 4 bus stops that will be incorporated into the project, 2 new ones, 2 existing ones being relocated. There'll also be the inclusion of traffic calming mountable medians. I know the word median kind of raises people's eyebrows a little bit and gets people concerned. We talk about medians, especially on Broadway, where access to businesses I know is paramount and important for those businesses and also people trying to access them. So with the mountable medians, we do not expect impeding any travel in and out of businesses. We're also looking at adding lighting throughout the project limits. And finally, pedestrian handrails on the Herrick Avenue overcrossing. So with that, I'd like to spend some time going through the project layouts and showing everyone location by location all the improvements that we just talked about. First here, we start in on the southern end of the project at the Herrick Avenue overcrossing. A number of these improvements are difficult to visualize just from a two-dimensional layout, so we tried to find example photos in these. And so you'll see, essentially, again, the theme here is the first time that you'll see a type of improvement on these layouts, we'll show a picture. As we continue through the presentation, you'll notice that we don't continue to carry, in all cases, these photos. We try to show them the first time that improvement's there. So with that, the Class 4 bikeway I mentioned, you've seen this photo already. We will start this at the ramps on the south side of the Herrick Avenue overcrossing. I'm sorry, the north side of the overcrossing. So that would include that 3-foot buffer area with the vertical channelizer / bollards that would be installed. You also see there at the intersection at the end of the ramp, the bike crossing markings. So we are proposing these at all driveways and intersections to bring awareness that cyclists are there. It also brings awareness to cyclists that that's where they should be traveling when crossing, making those movements at those conflict points. We also plan to install shared use and implement shared use striping across the Herrick Avenue overcrossing for peds and bikes, and convert that 8-foot shoulder, just bring more awareness that those users are predominantly using those spaces. And then finally, the pedestrian railing on the Herrick Avenue overcrossing as well. Moving on, this is just the east side of Herrick Avenue overcrossing. We'll also include the Class 4 bikeway as we showed in the last slide, the bike crossing markings as well, and then you see the extension of the shared use striping extending over to the intersection there. And now as we head north, the extension of the Class 4 bikeways continues. You see there to the left side of the screen, Pound Road from the Herrick Park and Ride lot. That Pound Road extends over to the Hickshari Trail, and so our plan is to also install and implement shared use striping to bring awareness to motorized users that peds and bikes are utilizing that facility to access the trail. And moving on further along, you see the continuation of the Class 4 bikeway onto the highway, and it continues into Eureka. I do want to kind of make a side note here. For those of you that have followed this project from its conception, the project had formerly included a shared use path that extended from the Herrick Avenue over Herrick Avenue Park and Ride to the Papa and Barkley intersection. And due to the environmental impacts associated with that feature, namely wetland impacts and the longer timeline to deliver that project, it was decided to break that portion of the work out and deliver it as a standalone project. The result of all of that is that we now are able to deliver all of these improvements much sooner and then deliver the shared use path on its own schedule. So in collaborating with our stakeholders and team, we felt that getting these improvements out as soon as we can was of the utmost importance. So you see the Class 4 bike lane on the highway. We would expect that once the shared use path is installed, that would probably be the predominant way that a bike or a pedestrian would access the Park and Ride and Hickshari Trail. Here you see the inclusion and beginning of a mountable median. This is really a traffic calming measure. And this starts here as you start approaching downtown Eureka here. And as we go in further, you see driveways with the driveway crossing marking similar to what you saw at the Herrick Avenue overcrossing intersections at the end of the ramps. These will be included at all intersections. We also have a little portion of sidewalk infill there below the image I'm showing, and the driveway that's pointing to that red shaded region where the sidewalk is located. There's not sidewalk there today, and we would be filling that in. Here we get to the Papa and Barkley intersection with 101 and Broadway. Through this stretch, we would be eliminating the acceleration and deceleration lanes, both coming in and coming out of the Papa and Barkley business. And those would be more a landscape median with the bike lane going behind that landscape median or landscaped area away, and that landscaped area would be between the traveled way and the bicycles, giving more comfort and space from motorized users. You'll see in the intersection, we have the enhanced bike and ped intersection markings. We haven't installed any of these features to my knowledge, in our district. So this is a first time and an exciting time to be including these. So all these photos that you see are obviously not photos, that we would be familiar in terms of in Humboldt County or in District 1, but nonetheless, similar photos to what we propose to install. So we have the green areas for the bikes, the white crossing striping for the pedestrians. We'll be replacing some of the ramps there in those locations. And the Papa and Barkley intersection is currently a right turn lane out and a left turn lane out of that intersection. We propose to make that one lane with the right and left sharing that single lane. The Class 4 bikeway continues You see the installation proposed of another mountable median to provide that traffic calming measure as vehicles enter the section of Eureka that we want to kind of encourage lower speeds. So as we come into Eureka here, we start getting into a more formal typical section, what we call a typical section of the highway. And so I wanted to show this just to give everyone a real sense for if you were to kind of slice Broadway through any point from here to the end of the project, this is the cross section and the lane configuration that you would expect to see as proposed with this project. So the center two-way left turn lane currently varies between 12 and 14 feet throughout the project limits. We propose to make that a uniform 12 feet throughout. So in some cases, we'd be decreasing that width by a little bit. The travel lanes, both two in each direction, would be reduced from 11 feet or from 12 feet to 11 feet, as you see here. You also see the bike lane in each direction with a buffer 3-foot area that's striped to prevent any movement in that area, with the channelizer / bollard in the middle of that area, providing that vertical separation between that outside travel lane and the bike lane. And then of course we have the sidewalk on the outside. Continuing down in this northbound direction, you see the continuation of the Class 4 bikeway, the enhanced bike markings at the driveways. There at that intersection to the right of the page, you see we also include the pedestrian marking in that case, since that is a formal pedestrian crossing. And that just continues along in terms of the bike markings at driveways, the Class 4 bikeway. And then here we get to the Tetralt Tire and the Pearson Building Center intersection. So at this location, there's a lot going on. So let's kind of step through this item by item. We have these are the two new bus stops that the project proposes to install to provide that transit connectivity and encourage more transit use. There would be one in both the southbound and one in the northbound direction. You'll see one on the Pearson side there with the bike lane that actually goes around to the outside of the bus. And similar to the picture you see in the bottom left of the screen, with the bike lane going between the sidewalk and the bus area for pickups and drop-offs. You also have the enhanced pedestrian and bike markings at the intersection on all legs. The bus stop in the southbound direction on the Pearson side of Broadway would propose to eliminate the acceleration lane coming out of Pearson's and converting that to the bus stop. And on the north side of the intersection, still on the Pearson side, on the west side of the highway, we propose to eliminate the deceleration lane to enter Pearson's, and that would be converted to a bike lane with a buffer area. And then vehicles would be turning right into Pearson's from that outside lane, not the deceleration right turn lane that exists today. On the Tetralt Tire side, you see we also have a bus stop proposed in the northbound direction, very similar. The bike lane would go around the bus stop, so the bus would be between the motorized traffic and the bike lane, similar to the photo you see there. And I believe that's everything. You also see the enhanced markings at driveways. We have some new sidewalk that's proposed to be installed there as well. And moving on, much of the same there. That's in front of the Union 76 gas station. And then as we approach here, the Hilfiker Lane intersection. At this intersection, we are proposing a new traffic signal. So this would provide a new crossing opportunity that is a protected signalized crossing for peds and bikes that kind of breaks up that long distance between the two signals that exist both north and south of this intersection. We also have the enhanced markings for peds and bikes at the intersection and continuation of the Class 4 bikeway, the driveway markings, and here you see another mountable median on the north side of the Hilfiker Lane intersection. Moving on, you can see the remaining portion of that mountable median driveway markings, class 4 bikeway. We get to Allard Avenue. There we include not only the bike markings, but because that is a local street, we also include the pedestrian marking there as well. And then moving on to McCollins. Here we have all the enhanced markings at all 4 legs. Here we have something a little unique, but it's what's called a bike box, and this provides kind of a refuge for bikes as they're approaching that signal to sit in that area, communicates to not only them, that's where they should be at in terms of waiting for the movement with the green at the signal, but also signifies and communicates to the vehicles that that's where bikes should be and brings awareness to that. You also see the driveway markings throughout. At Tomlinson, you've got both the ped and bicycle markings, and at Highland as well. And a little piece of sidewalk infill there just on the north side of McCollins Avenue. And then moving on, this is the final layout and the termination of the project. So at Truesdale, we've got the bike and ped markings. You'll see on the opposite side, on the east side there of Truesdale in front of the O'Reilly's business, we have another bus stop proposed, as well as one directly across from the McDonald's business at the South Bayshore Mall entrance. These are both 2 bus stops that exist at McCollins that will be relocated to these locations. Again, the bus is able to completely travel outside of the traveled way and into the shoulder, with the bike lane passing on the backside of the buses, leaving the buses between motorized traffic and the bike lane. We do propose with the bus stop in front of O'Reilly's to close the driveway to the O'Reilly's property. That particular driveway that is on the Broadway portion of the property. There are 3 other driveways on the Highland side that would propose to remain open. And then at the South Bayshore Mall entrance, you do see the enhanced bike and pedestrian markings there to bring awareness to those locations as well, and also inclusion of the class 4 bikeway. So moving on in terms of the topic of right-of-way, I didn't mention this, and I actually intended to when I went through the layouts, but permanent right-of-way acquisition would be required for the 2 new bus stops at the Pearson and Tetralt Tire intersection. The project also does require the use of temporary construction easements at various locations throughout the project limits, and no utility relocation is anticipated with the project. With regards to an environmental document, the level environmental document for this project will be a categorical exemption under CEQA and a categorical exclusion under NEPA. We do anticipate needing a coastal development permit for the project, and some of the more significant studies completed to date to support the environmental clearance of the project would be our air, noise, energy, and greenhouse gas studies, a community impact assessment, a visual impact analysis, a biological review, as well as an initial site assessment for hazardous waste. In terms of project cost and schedule, the estimated total capital cost, when we mention capital costs, we're talking about construction cost, not the cost for the design and to develop the project. This is solely to construct the project in construction. That total estimate is approximately $9.2 million at this time. Our schedule, we are targeting project approval and a final environmental document by April of this year, April 2023. We plan to have right-of-way acquisition complete by April of 2024. Our target to advertise for construction is September of 2024. And we are targeting to begin construction in the spring of 2025. It is expected to take 1 construction season to complete this job, so we would expect construction to be complete in early 2026. We do encourage your comments on the project. We ask that whichever medium you decide to submit your comments, that you do so no later than March 2nd of this year. As we had in the beginning of the presentation, you'll see the QR code there on the screen. You can simply, for most smartphones, open your camera app and just simply hold it up with that QR code in view. A little link should pop up that you can click. We've also created a tinyurl.com URL to make it a little easier to write down the project webpage. And you have a few ways that you can submit comments. So you can go ahead and send them via postal mail, I guess what we would call snail mail. You would send those to California Department of Transportation, North Region Environmental, E1 branch, attention Carrie Williams at P.O. Box 3700, Eureka, California, 95502. We also have a project email set up, which is South Broadway Complete Streets at dot.ca.gov. So either of those are fine. If you could please just remember to send your comments no later than March 2nd, that would be much appreciated. And with that, that concludes our presentation, and we'll go into a Q&A session for anyone that has any questions. And I'm going to start going through here on the chat feature to look at. Looks like we've got already some comments in here, so I'm going to go through those one by one if you prefer, and you can write your question in the chat. I'm going to go through those in order. If you're unable to use the chat, go ahead and use the raise hand feature, and once I'm done going through the chat questions, I will then revert over to anyone that has their hand raised with the WebEx raise hand feature. Okay, so let's see here. Rick, you have a question regarding westbound McClellan detectors do not work for bikes in spite of a couple attempts. Will Bike Box have new detectors? So I would imagine that we would be installing detectors in the Bike Box, as it seems like that would be a very common sense thing to put with that feature. I do not have that answer for certain, but I do know we have some project staff here, and I'm actually getting messages now, and I'm told yes, we will be including detectors in those bike boxes. And in terms of detectors that are currently out there today, maybe not functioning as intended, I'll be following up with our electrical staff, Rick, to see about that. If there are any other locations that you want to alert me, please let me know. But I will go ahead and alert that to our staff and look into that. There's a second question here also from Rick, and I may need you to clarify this. You're asking about how the 5-foot bike lanes would be maintained. Could you elaborate on that a little bit, Rick?
Finally found where the mute was. What I'm concerned with, I raised quite a long time ago, is a 5-foot bike lane with a buffer and having the bollards in there. The regular street sweeping that's done by Recology isn't probably going to be able to access this. And you've got other parts where they're going to be behind bike lanes, so that's probably only going to be 5 feet total. You won't even have any of the buffer. It was discussed one time about, well, maybe we can acquire separate, narrow sweeper, that Caltrans would have, but obviously that, I'm not so sure you can do that with a construction project to acquire it, but then the routine maintenance of that isn't going to happen. It's going to be like the sidewalk on Eureka Slough, where you have to call somebody and ask them to come out and sweep that by hand. So I don't know, have you got any more thoughts on how that's going to be accomplished?
Yeah, and you make a great point, Rick. And just within the last month plus, this very topic has come up as part of our PDT meetings. And you're correct, we do not currently have a piece of equipment that would be able to sweep behind the bollards in that narrow area between the curb face and the bollards, nor would we want an existing sweeper just driving over the existing bollards, as we'd be replacing them pretty often. So I know there is districts where management is aware of this issue. My understanding is that we have other locations, although not many, where I think we potentially already have this issue and need for such of a piece of equipment that can fit in that narrow area and keep this area, clear. We are aware that that is a important topic because, installing a bike lane that is full of debris kind of almost defeats the purpose if you're going to be encouraging people to not be in the bike lane. So I guess at this point I can say the district is aware of the issue. I think on the positive and plus side of this is that this job is not going into construction until 2025. So time is a little bit on our side to try to solve this, but I can tell you that the team is trying to make this a priority in terms of solving this so that we have a way to deal with it prior to it becoming an issue and a problem out there and kind of being ahead of that. So that's where we're at with that right now. But my understanding is there is equipment out there that exists that can do that. So we're going to continue looking at that, and we're aware of that issue. Did that answer your question, Rick?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to keep moving here. I've got a question from Kate. Can you please discuss what items you expect to impact the Bayshore Mall? So in terms of impacts to the Bayshore Mall, maybe we can bring that slide back here. So we would not have the inclusion of, we would no longer have the acceleration lane coming out of the mall if you were going to make a right turn out. We are proposing to make the left and the right lanes combined into one lane. And that is mainly so we can get trucks to have a little more room to off track and not pass their wheels over the sidewalk. But we don't expect any impacts as a result of that. We do have the enhanced markings through that area, so we'd expect safety to increase for peds and bikes. I'd say the biggest change would be the acceleration lane coming out of the mall heading southbound would no longer be there for that use. It would be for buses. I guess, Kate, if you had a follow-up to my response there, feel free to, I'll give you a minute to chime in with audio if you'd like.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for that. This is Kate from Bayshore Mall. And I see also that you are looking at having some area for mobilization and such like that, and then doing some sidewalk work in there. I am looking for clarification. We were talking about merging the two lanes together. Which two lanes you're speaking of there?
So it would be if you're coming out of the Bayshore Mall, it would be the left. If you're looking outside towards the intersection from the mall, the outside left lane adjacent to the right turn lane to go out nearest to the McDonald's, that left and right dedicated lane would be combined to a single left and right lane out. As you can, are you able to see the layout I have on the screen right now?
I can, it's just small. So you're talking about the South Bayshore Mall entrance, or where 101 is there right in front of McDonald's?
I'm talking about the entrance on the actual entrance and the leg of the South Bayshore Mall entrance. There's currently a dedicated right turn lane for vehicles that are turning right out of the south entrance to go southbound on 101. and then immediately next to that, there is a left turn lane. And then immediately next to that, there is another left turn lane. So the right turn lane that butts up to the left turn lane, those would be consolidated to a single lane that would be both a right turn and a left turn. And then you would still have the dedicated left turn going northbound. And that we're trying to shift traffic a little bit away from the McDonald's and provide a wider area there, because we realize that trucks make that movement. And so by doing that, we're able to take the off tracking of those vehicles with their trailers as they, have a tighter radius as they pass behind the truck, to not go over the sidewalk facilities there on the corner.
Okay, I got that one. Thank you. And I assume that area is already under an easement.
I believe we probably need a temporary construction easement for that. I don't believe our right-of-way extends in as far as the striping changes we make.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, moving on here. I have a question from Karina. Can you install temporary safety features while this works its way through the system? Fewer debt. Okay. So Karina, I understand your topic there. We have an interest in trying to deliver this as soon as possible. We do feel like the department has made a change with the project to actually get these safety features installed sooner. And that was really a big decision, with eliminating the shared use path from the project and letting that go as a standalone project. So had we kept this with the project, we would have expected this delivery schedule to even be delayed further by a year or more, because that particular shared use path is going to require off-site wetland mitigation, and mitigation is difficult to identify. It's lengthy to permit, and so we broke that out. So we were able to significantly decrease the timeline for delivery on that. Now it's still out in 2025. So when you look at the year, even my response would be, well, it's not maybe as soon as we would like. The funding in terms of this project and all of our portfolio of projects all sit within certain fiscal years based on the timeline to deliver. So, we have to complete our environmental document. We need the time to develop the design. We need the time to go and, get a coastal development permit. And so our schedule is really based on all of those processes, including, the right-of-way acquisition that we're going to require for both permanent acquisition and temporary construction easements. The schedule we have in the project right now is really the shortest time for those things to occur. Now, if some of those things do occur sooner, let's say we're able to acquire right-of-way sooner, or the design can go a little sooner, there always is a possibility that we can expedite things and move our milestones forward. And we actually did do that on this project. The original schedule on this project had us meeting project approval and environmental document until towards the end of June. And we had an opportunity to shrink down the time frame a little bit, because we made some headway a little quicker than we anticipated. And so now that is being shifted in by about 2.5 months to April. So we always continue to look for opportunities to reduce the schedule, and we will continue to do that on this, should some of the assumptions about the time frame to complete some of the tasks in terms of getting to delivery, if those can go sooner, we'll most definitely bring the schedule forward. So that's always something we're looking at. Did that answer your question, Karina?
Yeah. Hi, it's Karina.
Hi.
So the short answer is no temporary safety features?
So yeah, we're not going to be able to go and install these measures in a temporary fashion and have them in place, because in order to do so, we have to go through the channels that we're going through in terms of the environmental document, design, all of that. So this is the
I'm-
proposal. We wouldn't be installing temporary features at this time, at least sooner.
Okay, so 3 years. Got it. Thanks.
I will touch on, Karina, we do have and we had a public meeting about this, our Broadway pop-up demonstration, which I would say qualifies as temporary safety features, although they will not be permanent. They will be temporary for approximately 1 month only, but it is really intended to test some features throughout Broadway stretch, which will include testing some of the Class 4 bikeway, some mid-block crossing locations, as well as some other features. And so we are planning on testing those this spring once the weather gets a little bit better, and we would see more non-motorized traffic utilizing Broadway and more active transportation in terms of more of the season for that when it's not so wet out. So we will be testing some of those. I guess I would say it's not out of the realm of possibility, but at this time that's not that plan. But I can take that back to the team and always look for opportunities such as that, like what we're going to do in a temporary fashion with our Broadway pop-up demonstration. So I guess what I'll tell you is I'll take that back and look for those opportunities. But at this time, I'm not seeing it. It's not our plan, but doesn't mean it couldn't be in the future. So, but we'll consider your comment for sure. Thank you, Karina. All right, moving on. Greg Pratt has a question. Will southbound motorists be able to make right-hand turns coming out of Pearson's and Bayshore Mall?
And I left out when they have a red light.
Say that again, Greg.
I left out at the end of that when they're pulling out of Bayshore Mall and Pearson's and they have a red light, will they still be able to make a right-hand turn on red?
So at the Bayshore Mall, they would if they were first in line. If there's someone obviously waiting there to make a left, then they wouldn't because there isn't a free right there. And then let's go over to the Pearson's intersection and look at that. My understanding is that we are maintaining 2 lanes out of Pearson's. One of those would be a through left and one would be a right out. So I would expect that on red, a vehicle would be able to turn right out of Pearson's as
And
they do today.
The only reason I bring it up, Jeff, is just a concern that the bus can't see a motorist. They're looking at that inside lane for a break in traffic, and they won't be able to see if you kind of look back towards where they're going to be pulling out a bus or a vehicle coming out.
Yeah,
So
I see that.
Just want that to be taken into consideration is all.
Okay. All right, let me see. Let's move on through some of the other comments here. So comment from MK, was the demonstration project related to this one canceled? So I kind of touched on that one in regards to the Broadway pop-up demonstration that was formerly planned to happen in the fall of 2022. Unfortunately, our contractor that was slated to do that was impacted with their schedule. We were not able to get them out there to do that work. And then we decided that a department that we would not be able to get the data we needed to get by installing those in the winter because active transportation is significantly less when it's raining out. And we wanted to install it at a time when we have most peds and bikes out making those movements. So we are planning to still move forward with that, and we're tentatively scheduled to install that Broadway pop-up demonstration this spring. But there will be additional communication coming out about that as we get closer. So MK also asked to explain what a mountable median is. So a mountable median is, essentially mountable meaning, probably the biggest significance of that is with the emergency vehicles that utilize Broadway, and also that two-way left turn lane to travel north and south on Broadway to respond to events. They do heavily utilize that two-way left turn lane. So with the mountable median, we don't eliminate that use and their ability to use the two-way left turn lane to respond to incidents. So that's the biggest driver behind making it mountable.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
And moving on here, Althea says, can you explain why the plan is to use flexible bollards that driver can run over versus solid bollards or a guardrail that provide a physical barrier? So with regards to the soft barriers versus the physical barriers, we still need to be able to, with that buffer area adjacent to the travel lane, we still need to provide an area for motorized users to get off the highway should they need to. In an emergency situation, a car breaks down and whatnot, we still need to be able to provide that ability for that to happen, so we don't have the vehicles sitting in the middle of the travel lane, which is a significant safety issue. And so that is really the reason why we're using the flexible bollards, still to be able to provide that ability for that to happen, and not a physical hard barrier. And these class 4 bikeways, in terms of the flexible bollard and channelizer, is a fairly common treatment seen in a lot of urban areas, and how these are installed as well. All right, Rena, that's funny. Someone's calling them plastic straws. Yeah, I guess they kind of do look like a giant straw. But I think I just answered that one. PTB says, seeing fewer traffic calming features than I would like, but glad to see this high traffic implementation, which hopefully creates comfort with complete efforts. Lots of paint. Physics works better than signage. So yeah, I mean, there is a lot of paint, but I think in collaboration with our team, we've had a number of external partners, namely the Coalition for Responsible Transportation, which I know is highly regarded locally for this subject matter and complete streets projects. And it's not to say that after this project, there maybe couldn't be additional complete streets improvements made, but through the collaboration of our stakeholders and team, the department, this is based on improving transit, improving bike and ped use, and encouraging more active transportation. A huge benefit in getting a bike lane on Broadway that doesn't exist today, and we have other projects and efforts to make this a continuation along Broadway heading north. So at this time, this is what we're planning to install. We do feel like it's going to solve a lot of issues out there, but nonetheless, that doesn't leave out the possibility that additional measures couldn't come to Broadway as well. S says, you were unable to see the presentation. Will the recording be available after? Yes, this is being recorded. It will be posted on the project website. At the end of this meeting, I will flash up that QR code one last time to give people an opportunity, as well as the tiny URL domain name, so that you can, if you didn't get a chance to capture that, or maybe you came into the meeting a little later, it'll be posted at the project website. I would give us at least a couple days to get it posted, but with our amazing PIO staff, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't already have it up tomorrow. But don't be upset if it takes a couple days to get up there. But yes, the recording will be up. Karina asked, will speed limits be lowered? So we are not proposing to lower the speed limits. The speed limit is dictated by the vehicle code in 85th percentile in terms of the speeds that are traveled on there. So we are not planning to make any changes to that. And I see Miles, you commented that a recording of the meeting will be available. Miles included the link in the chat, so if you want that, that's there. Althea, another question here. With the northbound bus stop being moved from McCollins, a fully signalized intersection at Truesdale Highland, which is not currently, have a signal? Is there a plan to add one? Anticipate that lots of people will cross mid-block because the distance to existing crosswalks, especially with trip generators like the Shell and Best Western. And I'll go down to that intersection. The proposal with the project is that people would use the formal South Bayshore Mall entrance as their crossing. We do have McCullen's. There was former proposals to add some crossings across Broadway through those sections, but unfortunately it gets difficult with business access with the offset intersection of Truesdale and Highland. So the consensus was that we have the signal at South Bayshore Mall entrance and trying to get them as close to that location as possible. So that's where we would be encouraging peds and bikes to cross formally.
Okay, because what I see, I live near Broadway and Hawthorne. That's the intersection that I commute at. Is that, it's I think 350 feet to the closest crosswalk, and I see a lot of people making mid-block crossings across Broadway, when the crosswalk is that far, or when they have to walk 350 feet in the wrong direction, cross the street, and then walk 350 feet back to reach their intended destination. So I anticipate that being a pretty big problem.
Yeah, the real intention behind putting the bus stops nearest to a signal is that, as people leave, get off the bus, there's a Fulmar crossing close by. Ideally, the bus stop by O'Reilly's would be closer to the South Bayshore Mall entrance in that northbound direction, but unfortunately we have quite a grade difference between the earth there and land just to the east with a large retaining wall. So there's really not an opportunity to put it there. So the furthest north opportunity is there right in front of the O'Reilly's for that reason. Okay. S says, as I was unable to view your presentation, I'm asking, will the southbound, is that rapid transit? Is that RTS, or is that bus stop?
Redwood Transit System.
Redwood Transit System, okay. I'm asking whether it will still be available. So my belief is that the bus stops at McCullen will move to these new locations near the South Bayshore Mall entrance. I see Greg Pratt is still on the call or the meeting here, and that would really be an HTA decision. So I can communicate with Greg about that, or if Greg's able to respond to whether HTA plans to maintain those stops or not.
Yeah, it seemed like it was presented that those were needed to be moved to those locations. I'm not sure if the northbound with the improvements would work. Southbound perhaps we could still use. But I just don't know if it fits in with your plans to keep those.
Yeah, I think the idea, let me go back to who asked this question. It was,
I think it was presented to me that they were being moved.
yeah, that is our understanding, as I mentioned before I kicked it over to you, Greg. And the intention here with the project is really to be able to get the buses out of the traveled way.
Right.
That would not be able to happen if those bus stops remained. So I know that is the intention and plan as we also move forward north on Broadway with other projects, is to get this similar type of improvement made so that we can get the buses out of the traveled way.
Yeah, just real quick, I think the problem with the southbound is our bus sticks out in the road about a foot as it is.
Mm-hmm.
The current location.
Okay. So I believe S, to your questions, that those would be relocated and removed for that reason. All right, let's see here. Karina answered a question for us. Move to Truesdale. Yeah, so being moved to Truesdale on the O'Reilly side, and then further north a little bit and directly in front of the McDonald's there at the South Bay Shore Mall entrance. Let's see here. Althea asks, is it possible to add texture such as a rumble strip across the road surface in front of crosswalks where the speed limit changes as drivers enter Eureka? So you may be talking about such as, like, I know sometimes you are in a high-speed facility, you're approaching an intersection, and at times there are we call them bots dots, but some sort of a marker, physical marker on the roadway that your vehicle travels over and kind of alerts you of something. Is that what you're talking about, Althea?
I mean, literally, like Washboard Road, I think is what it's called. I've seen it in a rural area where there was like a stop sign in the middle of nowhere and no lighting for miles around. I think like maybe 100 feet in front of the stop sign, there was a patch of like Washboard Road so that people would know they were approaching the stop sign at night before they could see it.
Right.
And it told them to slow down, and you know, in the daytime kind of encouraged them to slow down. So not like a bot stop, but like an actual band of road texture.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I've seen those as well. I think that's definitely something worth considering. So we'll take that back to the team and discuss that. Thank you for your comment. So you have another one here. Is there any plan to increase traffic enforcement before, during, or after this project? Having markings across driveways sounds nice, but some drivers think it's funny to park them and force pedestrians into the shoulder lanes. So, you know, our project would not have any necessary mechanism where we would have any involvement with increased enforcement. Enforcement is kind of one of the issues in terms of when we have people not utilizing features correctly. Now we do partner with Eureka Police Department on our projects, and they're often part of a stakeholder and updates on our projects. So I would say if we see that being an issue or just alerting them of concerns around that, there's definitely a channel of communication there where we can communicate that to them. So we'll keep that in our minds and consider that. All right, so PTB, we always build to a finished state assuming impacts and not allowing for incremental improvements based on actual human usage. What would you change if all powerful to allow for small changes with high frequency as opposed to huge change every 20 years? All right, so I'm trying to grasp your question here. So the way I'm taking your question is making smaller improvements initially and then incrementally adding things and features in terms of improvements over time, as opposed to maybe one massive project that does something that's going to exist for a long time. Maybe an incremental project allows us to learn more about the usage of it and then inform additional changes and improvements. Is that in essence what your question is asking?
Yes, sir, you got it.
Okay. So I think that that is actually, I would say, our mindset here, where based on the information we have, based on surveys we've done, based on feedback we've gotten from the community and stakeholders and data that we have with regards to collisions, these improvements here are what we feel is, and our stakeholders that we've interacted with feel are kind of the best fit for the corridor to solve the issues that we have. Now, could there be other things? Of course. I would say that the nice thing about these improvements is they're fairly low cost when we look at some more physical improvements that would involve a lot of concrete and road widening and things of that nature. Most of this is striping. So I would say that, striping is fairly easy to modify. But, I see your point on that. And, we are basing these things based on the data we have, the collision histories we have, the research being done. So
I'm not complaining about it.
okay.
I'm just curious, like what causes us to do large stretches of road all at once? Are we looking at grants, budgets, regulatory filings, CEQA, et cetera, type exceptions or approvals? Where's the big slowdowns for these projects?
So are you asking why we go and do a large project versus more smaller projects, like periodically?
Yeah, let's go
Okay.
with that one.
All right. So I think, one thing that comes to mind is that, we look at a big way that the department works now is what's called asset management. So there's a lot of different types of infrastructure and features that we have on our roadway. This one doesn't really fit with that, but when we think about that from a department wide, we've got structures, we've got drainage features, we have traffic management system features, we have pavement. And one of our large goals when we're doing projects is we want to minimize our impacts to the traveling public. And each time that we have a project, there are impacts to the traveling public. We have traffic control out there, whether we have a lane closure. It's not business as usual in terms of getting from point A to point B for people traveling through there. So we look at a stretch of road, we really try to look at all the things that we need to address and do and maximize our improvements, whether it be safety or whether it be some other asset that we need to address, with the real goal that we're minimizing the impacts to the environment and to the public. So I would say that's at probably the core of why we try to include as much as we can into a project. Sometimes we can't do as much as we would like because our needs in terms of what we need out on our roadways and the projects that we need, the resources don't match up with the need. So that's where we get into this, I don't call it a game, but we get into this process of trying to determine what is the most critical elements that we need to include in a project when we don't necessarily have just an endless supply of funding to do everything we want to do. So I would say that's probably at the core of the reason why projects are initiated and developed in that fashion. Not sure if that really answers your question, but.
Oh, it's probably a bigger question, but I appreciate the insight.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for getting my wheels spinning on that one. That was a tough one. All right, Althea, you ask another question here. Do I understand correctly that for the Herrick overpass, there will be shared use markings, but no physical barriers or sidewalks to protect pedestrians and cyclists as they use the overpass? That's correct. There is a shoulder, I believe it's 8 feet, and we will be adding shared use path markings, bike and ped markings on the structure just to bring more awareness to vehicles that those users should and are there. But there is no plan to put a physical barrier onto the structure. Morgan says, I'm glad to see these measures in process. Look forward to a continuation of measures along the rest of Broadway corridor in the hopefully not too distant future. So you make a good point. We do have other projects such as we have a middle portion of the Broadway kind of Complete Streets project that continues north from here. We have a couple other projects that are currently going to construction. Just to maybe give everyone a heads up here, I was actually just at the HCOG board meeting just before this at 4 o'clock, and I gave a presentation of all of our projects, either recently constructed, ready to go to construction this year, and currently in development from basically the south end of Eureka all the way to the north end of the Eureka Arcata corridor. HCOG does record those meetings. So if you go on the HCOG website, I'm sure you'll be able to find a recording of the board meeting that took place today, February 16th. And there's probably about a 20-minute presentation I did just earlier today covering all the improvements and plans we have for Broadway. So that would be a great thing to go back and look at. All right, let's see here. Morgan, you have another question. I'm glad to see these measures in process. Oh, never mind. For some reason, it just was giving me the same question. All right, Jay Cult. Sooner would be better, and temporary safety features would be a huge improvement, but it's fantastic to see this project finally moving forward. It should have been done years ago, and the longer it takes, more people are put at risk. Thank you for listening to the public's calls for complete streets in Eureka. So echo everything you have to say on that. And like I said, we have taken a couple measures to try to expedite this sooner. We will continue to look for ways to shrink the schedule down and deliver it sooner, most definitely. S says we live much closer to McCullen and Broadway. Moving the bus stops to Truesdale Highland will be a major disadvantage for us, so we're quite unhappy about this move. Okay, I understand that. And again, we're trying to move them closer to the signals where we can adequately get the buses off the highway. And unfortunately, sometimes that might mean a longer travel for some, but in the grand scheme of trying to have a good fit for everyone that's going to be using them, that is the location that's going to make the best, most sense for where they need to be located and the safety features we're trying to install with them. Althea says, I believe that an immediate interim safety measure that would save lives on Broadway and 4th and 5th without changing the built environment would be having CHP and EPD enforce the existing traffic laws. Okay. From Althea, okay, so the bike lane and sidewalk are recovery zones for cars. So I guess one point I want to make here is that I know we get really focused on, this is a complete streets project. So, the focus is really peds and bikes, but we do need to design the facility for all users. And, considering a vehicle having to stay in the middle of a lane because it's broken down and not being able to move out of the traffic lane and say other traffic's coming, doesn't see that vehicle sitting there, has to veer off into the bike lane with a cyclist there, that's a major safety feature. So when we think about these things, we are considering all users. Our intention is not for that area to be somewhere that's a recovery zone for cars, but it is done with intention as a safety feature to have that shoulder there. That is why we have those shoulders, but kind of give it dual purpose with making it dedicated for bikes, but we still need to be able to provide that safe haven should a vehicle need to come off and sit off the highway because it's disabled. So that's really the reason for that. 85th percentile rule is designed for rural highways, not city streets. Is the entry ramp in front of the main building at Tetrarch going to be blocked off? So when you're C. Bush, when you're referencing the entry ramp, if you're talking about the driveway to the north of the intersection, yes, we are proposing to close that driveway for the bus stop. And then Althea says, is there any plan to educate drivers on the difference between a freeway and a highway? Local drivers seem to think that because Broadway is Highway 101, that they can drive like it is a freeway and that any pedestrian who is killed deserved it. So, we do have, education is actually kind of a big part of our becoming more of a part of our public outreach process. And that's something that we did when we installed the mid-block crossing in front of the Broadway Cinema. We did a series of videos and educational pieces trying to educate drivers about utilizing those. So I can be assured that with improvements like this, coming online, that there will be education videos and pieces that we'll be utilizing, especially on our social media channels, to educate drivers on what these improvements are, how they should be used, what to expect. So education is definitely going to be and continue to be a big piece of our outreach strategy to the public. Then S says we need bus stops both directions at McCollum. The northbound bus stop is not in traffic lane. So we were having some discussion with Greg on that. I guess my response to that is we will convene back with Humboldt Transit Authority to be sure our response in terms of just permanently relocating those bus stops. The two you see on the screen now makes the most sense. So we'll reconsider or just go back and look at that to confirm by meeting with them. Music to Hear says, is it too late to include continuous bike and pedestrian equipment to the project? I'm not certain, but we'll look into that as well. And Rick asks, will the bike lanes be green in color? So Rick, I'm not certain that we're planning to do them green. You're probably referencing something similar to what you see in McKinleyville with the bike lane shoulder painted green. Go back and discuss that. I have arguments on both sides, and I'd also, I know you and others are part of our kind of the extension of our PDT and stakeholders on the project. So I would encourage that we maybe talk about that. I wonder if having green bike lanes might take away from the green that's at the intersection in terms of bringing less awareness to that, but I'm sure that there's studies and information on that. So I'd say let's talk about that further. I'm sure that individuals on our product development team probably have some insight on that as well. So I'd like to take that back to the team and ask, and we'll get back to you on that. And Rick, if you have any perspective on that and you want to send, comment also to elaborate on that to the project email, I'd definitely appreciate any insight and input you have. Let's see here. Joseph, you were just clarifying what HCOG was. Althea says, why are there no plans to have any kind of physical separation, even flex posts on the Herrick overpass? A bicyclist was killed there a year ago. Everyone assumed he was a reckless cyclist until he was identified and turned out to be a retired Caltrans engineer. So Althea, I will bring that back to the team. I don't have a great answer for you on why we don't have some sort of a bollard or separation proposed on that, but we'll take that back to the team and see if that makes sense and if something could be added.
Hey, Jeff, I'm pretty sure it is a class 4 up there. Todd can correct me, but I think we are proposing posts up there.
Say that.
Yeah, I think we're proposing posts up there.
Okay.
And also Todd added the pedestrian fence there too to help prevent people from, falling off. So.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So it sounds like we are looking at that, but we'll nonetheless talk about that further just to be sure. Next question from Karina. Broadway is why congestion is to be encouraged. Lower cars make it safer for everyone. Okay, and that, some of the features on there are traffic calming in nature. Also, number of traffic calming features just recently made on 4th Street and will continue in the North Powder Broadway and even 5th Street. So that's definitely a focus of ours is traffic calming. Green bike lanes will make the infrastructure continuous rather than fragmented. Karina mentioned that. So as I responded to Rick, we'll take that back to the team and discuss the green bike lane comment, which currently is not planned to be that way, but nonetheless, we will discuss it. So with that looks like the end of the chat questions. I'm just looking at the participants to see if anyone has their hand up. I do not see anyone with their hand up. And I'm not seeing any other questions come in. So with that, PTB says thank you. Thank you for all attending. Appreciate it. Look forward to getting this project moving along forward. As I mentioned, I know there's a lot of interest to get these improvements done sooner rather than later, and that is at the core of what we always try to do. We have enough work in the pipeline that anything we can get moving along quicker is always better for everyone. So if things end up taking shorter for any of the project elements, we most definitely will look at ways to expedite delivery of the project. So we appreciate all of your involvement and your input. Again, just a reminder, and let me put up the QR code for the project webpage. Scan that if you don't have it. I think someone also put it in the chat. Again, comments no later than March 2nd. That's appreciated. Thank you for all your questions and enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you, everyone.